You know, there is a question that I think haunts every astronomer, every physicist, and perhaps everyone who has ever stood under a clear, dark sky and looked up at the Milky Way. It is a question that seems, on the surface, to be born of curiosity. But if you dwell on it, if you truly let its implications sink into your mind, it becomes a source of profound existential vertigo. The question is deceptively simple. Where is everybody? We look out into the universe, and we see a cosmos that is terrifyingly vast and overwhelmingly old. Our galaxy alone, the Milky Way, is a swirling island of starlight containing something like 400 billion stars. And we now know, thanks to the Kepler Space Telescope and other magnificent instruments, that planets are not rare, they are ubiquitous. Almost every star you see in the night sky hosts a family of worlds. The chemistry of life, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, is not unique to Earth. It is the most common chemistry in the universe, forged in the hearts of dying stars and scattered across the galaxy like seeds in the wind. The universe has had 13.8 billion years to brew complexity, to let life arise, to allow intelligence to flourish. And yet, when we point our radio telescopes at the stars, when we scan the heavens for a signal, a beacon, a whisper of a machine or a mind, we hear nothing. Only the hiss of cosmic background radiation and the mindless roar of dying suns. There is a great silence out there. And this silence is not just puzzling, it is terrifying. It screams at us that something is wrong with our intuition about the universe. We grow up on science fiction, on stories of warp drives and galactic federations, of cantinas filled with diverse species mingling together. We assume that contact is inevitable, that it is merely a matter of time before we join a cosmic community. But I want to suggest to you that this silence is real. It is not a failure of our technology, nor is it a game of cosmic hide-and-seek. It is the sound of a universe that imposes absolute, insurmountable physical barriers between its inhabitants. I want to argue that we will never meet aliens, not because they don't exist, they almost certainly do, scattered across the infinite dark like lonely lighthouses, but because the laws of physics, the structure of space-time, and the sheer, crushing scale of reality make contact impossible. We are, and we will almost certainly remain, profoundly alone. To understand why, we must first confront the sheer scale of the arena in which we find ourselves. The human mind is not built to comprehend galactic distances. We evolved on the African savannas, where the difference between a mile and 10 miles mattered for survival, but the difference between a light year and a parsec was meaningless. We throw around numbers like millions of miles or light years, but they become abstractions, mere marks on a page that fail to convey the physical reality of the abyss that separates us from our neighbors. Consider our own solar system. It seems vast to us. The Voyager 1 spacecraft, one of the fastest objects ever built by human hands, has been traveling for nearly half a century. It is hurtling away from us at tens of thousands of miles per hour, a speed that would cross the Atlantic in minutes. And yet, in cosmic terms, it has barely left our front porch. It has not even reached the Oort cloud, the icy shell that surrounds our solar system. To reach the very nearest star, Proxima Centauri, would take Voyager over 70,000 years. 70,000 years. That is a span of time longer than the entirety of recorded human history. If our ancestors had launched a Voyager probe when they were painting the caves at Lascaux, it would still be less than halfway there today. And that is just to the nearest star, a mere neighbor in a city of 400 billion suns. The galaxy itself is 100,000 light-years across. To cross it at Voyager speeds would take hundreds of millions of years longer than the time separating us from the dinosaurs. This is the first fundamental barrier, the barrier of space itself. Space is not merely big, it is effectively infinite relative to the biological lifespan of a human being or even the lifespan of a civilization. We often imagine that future technology will solve this. We say, well, we went from horse-drawn carriages to rockets in a century. Surely in 1,000 years we will have faster ships. But this optimism ignores the tyranny of the rocket equation and the laws of thermodynamics. To move a ship fast enough to make interstellar travel feasible, say, to reach a nearby star in a human lifetime, requires energy on a scale that is almost impossible to conceive. You would need to accelerate to a significant fraction of the speed of light. But as you approach those speeds, the energy required to accelerate further grows exponentially. To send a ship the size of the International Space Station to the nearest star at a modest percentage of light speed would require more energy than the entire human race consumes in a year, perhaps in a century. And you have to carry that fuel with you, which makes the ship heavier, which requires more fuel to accelerate, creating a vicious cycle of diminishing returns known as the tyranny of the rocket equation. And even if we could build such engines, even if we could harness the power of antimatter or fusion to propel us across the void, we run into the structure of the universe itself. The speed of light is not just a speed limit for traffic. It is the speed of causality. It is the speed at which information can travel through the fabric of reality. Nothing, no signal, no ship, no influence can travel faster. This means that the universe is compartmentalized. It is broken up into isolated pockets of causality, separated by gulfs of time and space that cannot be bridged. When we look at a star 1,000 light-years away, we are not seeing it as it is now. We are seeing it as it was 1,000 years ago. If a civilization there sent us a message today, hello, we would not receive it until the year 3026. If we replied immediately, hello back, they would not get our answer until the year 4026. A simple exchange of greetings would take 2 millennia. Civilizations could rise and fall, species could go extinct, and stars could die in the silence between a question and its answer. This is not communication. This is archaeology. It is shouting into a canyon so vast that the echo returns only after you are dead and dust. But let us assume, for a moment, that we are determined. We are a stubborn species. After all, we decide that we will build generation ships, vast arcs that will drift through the interstellar night for thousands of years, carrying communities of humans to distant worlds. This is a staple of science fiction, a beautiful dream of spreading the light of consciousness to the stars. But when you strip away the romance and look at the physics and biology, the dream collapses into a nightmare. Space is not an empty void waiting to be crossed. It is a hostile, violent environment. The space between the stars is filled with cosmic rays, high-energy particles accelerated by supernova explosions that tear through DNA like bullets. On Earth, we are protected by our planet's magnetic field and a thick blanket of atmosphere. In deep space, there is no such protection. A human crew traveling to another star would be subjected to a bombardment of radiation that would degrade their bodies, destroy their minds, and sterilize their reproductive systems long before they reach their destination. Shielding is possible, of course, but it requires mass lead, water, rock meters thick, and adding mass brings us back to the energy problem. To push a ship heavy enough to protect its crew requires energy we simply do not possess and likely never will. And then there is the biology. We are Earthlings. This is not just a poetic statement, it is a biological fact. We evolved in 1-gram gravity. We evolved with a 24-hour circadian rhythm locked to the spin of this planet. We evolved in a symbiotic relationship with a microbiome of bacteria that requires specific environmental conditions. We are not designed for the void. We see this even in low Earth orbit, where astronauts suffer from bone density loss, muscle atrophy, vision impairment, and immune system dysfunction after just a few months. To expect a population of humans to live, reproduce, and thrive for centuries or millennia inside a metal can, completely cut off from the biosphere that created them, is to misunderstand the fundamental nature of life. We are not independent entities. We are expressions of a planetary ecosystem. Sever that connection, and we wither. So, the physical barriers are immense. The distances are too great, the energy requirements too high, the radiation too deadly, and our biology too fragile. But there is another layer to this impossibility, one that is perhaps even more disturbing. It is the realization that the universe is not static. It is expanding. The galaxies are rushing away from each other. The space between the stars is stretching. We are living in a universe that is actively pulling itself apart, isolating its constituent parts. In the local neighborhood of our galaxy, gravity holds things together, but on the largest scales, the cosmos is becoming more lonely with every passing second. And even within our galaxy, the stars are drifting, moving in their own chaotic orbits. A civilization that we might want to visit is a moving target, separated from us not just by space, but by the complex gravitational dance of the galaxy. This realization forces us to confront a humbling truth. We are trapped. We are imprisoned in our solar system by the laws of physics, just as surely as we are bound to the surface of the Earth by gravity. The idea of a Star Trek future, where we zip between star systems as easily as we fly between cities, is a fantasy. It is a beautiful fantasy, one that speaks to our desire for exploration and connection, but it is a fantasy nonetheless. The reality is that for all practical purposes, we are alone in a dark, silent room, and the walls are moving further away. However, this physical isolation is only the first part of the problem. If space were the only barrier, perhaps we could hope for a signal, a message sent by a civilization immensely older and wiser than ours, one that has patience we cannot imagine. But there is another dimension to the problem, a dimension that is often overlooked but is arguably even more insurmountable than the light years that separate us. That dimension is time. We tend to think of the universe as a place, a stage where events happen. But the universe is also a time, a 13.8 billion year long story, and human civilization. The period in which we have been capable of looking up and asking, "Where is everybody?" is a flicker, a momentary spark in a vast, dark chronology. We have been a technological civilization capable of sending radio waves for barely 100 years. In the context of the age of the Milky Way, 100 years is nothing. It is less than a heartbeat. It is a rounding error. This leads us to the concept of temporal isolation. For two civilizations to meet, or even to exchange a signal, they must not only exist in the same galaxy, they must exist at the same time. And given the age of the universe, the probability of that overlap is vanishingly small. Imagine the history of the universe as a cosmic year. The Big Bang happens on January 1st at midnight. The Earth doesn't form until September. Dinosaurs appear in late December and vanish on Christmas Day. Humans? We don't appear until the very last minutes of December 31st. And our modern technological civilization, the one with radio telescopes and spacecraft, that exists only in the very last fraction of the very last second of the cosmic year. Now, imagine another civilization arising on a distant star. Perhaps they flourished for 1,000,000 years, a long, golden age of science and art, but they did so 1 billion years ago. Their star has since died, their planets are cold dust, and their radio signals have long since faded into the background noise of the galaxy. They were here, and they were magnificent, but we missed them. We missed them by an eternity. Or perhaps there is a civilization destined to arise on a star system that is currently just a cloud of gas. They will look up at the sky and wonder where everyone is, 5 billion years after our sun has swollen into a red giant and consumed the Earth. They will be alone, just as we are alone. We are like two people trying to meet in a vast, dark forest, but we are not only separated by miles of trees, we are separated by centuries. One of us is walking through the forest in the year 1000, and the other is walking the same path in the year 3000. We can shout, we can light fires, we can leave messages carved into the bark of the trees, but we will never meet. We will never know the other was there. The forest is silent not because it is empty, but because we are ghosts to one another, separated by the impenetrable wall of time. This temporal disconnection suggests that the galaxy could be teeming with life, or rather, that the galaxy is a garden where life blooms constantly. But the blooms are short-lived. Civilizations may be like fireflies in the night flashing into existence, burning brightly for a brief cosmic moment and then flickering out. They may destroy themselves with their own technology, or be wiped out by natural catastrophes like asteroids or supervolcanoes, or they may simply exhaust their resources and fade away. If the average lifespan of a technological civilization is short, say, a few thousand years, then the chances of two of them existing simultaneously in a galaxy as old as ours are near zero. We are forced to consider the possibility that at this precise moment, in this particular slice of time, we might be the only ones, the only eyes looking up, the only minds wondering, the only consciousness in a galaxy of 400 billion stars. It is a thought that makes you shiver. It makes you feel small, fragile, incredibly vulnerable, but it also makes you feel something else, something I will come to later, a sense of infinite preciousness. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We are still standing at the edge of the precipice, looking out at the impossible distances. We have established that we cannot go to them, and they, if they adhere to the same laws of physics, cannot come to us. The energy required to move matter between the stars is prohibitive. The time required is prohibitive. The biology is prohibitive. We are islands. And yet, there is a counter-argument. You might say, but Brian, what about von Neumann probes? What about self-replicating machines? Surely an advanced civilization could send out robot explorers that don't care about time or radiation, and those robots could colonize the galaxy. It is a sound argument in theory. If you can build a machine that can mine an asteroid, build a copy of itself, and send that copy to the next star, you could, in principle, explore the entire galaxy in a few million years. Since the galaxy is billions of years old, if even one civilization had done this, they should be here by now. Their machines should be everywhere. Every asteroid in our solar system should have a frantic alien mining bot chewing on it, but they aren't here. We look at the asteroids, and they are pristine. We look at the moon, and it is silent dust. We look at the structure of our solar system, and we see no evidence of tampering, no evidence of engineering. This brings us back to the great silence. If it were easy, or even possible, to conquer the galaxy, someone would have done it. The fact that we see no one suggests that it is not possible. It suggests that there are barriers we haven't even thought of, yet traps that catch every civilization before it can spread. Perhaps the trap is complexity itself. As civilizations become more advanced, they become more fragile. We see this on Earth. Our society is a complex web of interdependent systems, electricity, internet, supply chains. If one piece breaks, the whole thing can wobble. Perhaps, as a civilization reaches the point where it can build starships, it also reaches the point where it becomes unstable. It creates technologies that are too dangerous to handle nuclear weapons, engineered viruses, artificial intelligence that doesn't share its goals. It may be that the window of opportunity for interstellar travel is incredibly narrow, a brief period between the invention of rockets and the inevitable collapse of the civilization that built them. Or perhaps the barrier is not self-destruction, but something more subtle. Perhaps it is a lack of motivation. We assume that aliens would want to explore, to conquer, to expand. We project our own 15th century age of exploration mentality onto the cosmos. We imagine alien conquistadors. But an advanced civilization, one that has survived for millions of years, might have outgrown that primitive drive. They might have turned inward. They might live in virtual universes of their own creation, infinite digital landscapes that are far more interesting and malleable than the cold, dead vacuum of space. Why spend 10,000 years traveling to a dead rock around a distant star when you can simulate a billion paradises in a computer the size of a walnut. This digital transcendence is a fascinating possibility. It implies that the universe is full of sleeping giants, civilizations that have locked themselves away in golden cages of their own making, disinterested in the physical universe outside. They are not dead, but they are silent. To us, looking for radio waves or warp signatures, they would be invisible. They would be indistinguishable from the background noise. So we are left with a picture of the universe that is starkly different from our science fiction dreams. It is not a bustling metropolis. It is a sparsely populated archipelago of lonely islands, separated by oceans so vast and storms so violent that no ship can cross them. Each island may have its own inhabitants, its own stories, its own triumphs and tragedies, but they are destined to remain forever unknown to one another. The story of life in the universe is not a novel with interacting characters. It is an anthology of short stories, unconnected, unread by anyone but the authors. This realization, the realization of our physical and temporal imprisonment, forces us to rethink our place. We are not the start of a galactic empire. We are not toddlers waiting to be allowed into the adult room. We are, quite possibly, the only conscious observers in our corner of the universe for a billion years in either direction. And this brings us to the nature of the signal itself. The optimism of the SETI program, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, is built on this hope. We listen for the beep, beep, beep of a beacon. We sent out the Arecibo message. We put gold records on the Voyager probes. But even here, the laws of physics are cruel. A radio signal, like light, spreads out as it travels. It obeys the inverse square law. Double the distance, and the signal strength drops to 1/4. By the time a radio signal from Earth reaches even a nearby star, it is incredibly faint. By the time it crosses the galaxy, it is indistinguishable from the thermal noise of the universe. To send a signal that could be heard across the galaxy would require a transmitter with the power of a star. And who builds a lighthouse that consumes a sun? Furthermore, there is the problem of recognition. We assume that alien intelligence will think like us. We assume they will use mathematics, prime numbers, radio waves. We assume they will be curious, but evolution on Earth has produced millions of species, and only one uses radio waves. Intelligence takes many forms. The intelligence of an octopus is profound, but it is alien to us. It is distributed, strange, silent. If we met an alien intelligence, would we even recognize it? Or would we look right through it, seeing only natural processes? As we stand here, firmly planted on Earth, looking up at the band of the Milky Way, we must accept the heavy probability that the silence is real. It is not a mistake. It is the nature of things. We are separated by the geometry of space-time. We are separated by the entropy of the universe. We are separated by the limits of energy. But do not let this despair take hold of you just yet, because in this isolation, in this enforced solitude, there is a hidden beauty. If we cannot have the galaxy, if we cannot have the federation of stars, what do we have? We have this. We have this rock. We have this thin layer of atmosphere. We have the sound of the wind in the trees, the laughter of our children, the ability to look up and wonder. The impossibility of meeting aliens strips away the distraction of the out there. It forces our gaze back to the here. It tells us that we cannot count on salvation from the stars. We cannot count on a wiser species swooping down to solve our problems, to fix our climate, to cure our diseases, to teach us how to live in peace. No one is coming. The cavalry is not over the hill. The silence of the universe is a mirror, reflecting us back to ourselves. And in that reflection, we see something startling. If we are alone, or effectively alone, then we are the custodians of something incredibly rare: consciousness. The ability of the universe to know itself. Without us, or beings like us, the universe is just a mechanism, a giant, clockwork machine grinding away in the dark. It is vast. Yes, it is powerful. Yes, but it is meaningless. It is only through the eyes of a conscious observer that the universe acquires meaning. We are the meaning makers. So, the first step in understanding why we will never meet aliens is to accept the physical reality of our prison. But I use the word prison, ironically, for a prison is a place of punishment. Earth is not a prison. It is a fortress. It is a sanctuary. It is the only place in the vast, cold, hostile cosmos where we can exist. The walls that keep us in also keep the deadly void out. We are beginning to see the outline of a different story. Not a story of expansion and conquest, but a story of introspection and stewardship. If the universe is a dark ocean, Earth is the only lifeboat we know of. And the realization that there are no other ships on the horizon, that no one is answering our flares, changes everything about how we should behave on this boat. But before we fully embrace that responsibility, we must dig deeper into the specific reasons why the dream of contact is so persistent and why its failure is so inevitable. We need to look at the barriers of biology and the profound disconnect between human cognition and whatever else might be out there. Because it's not just that they are far away. It's that even if they were here, standing in front of us, we might not ever truly meet them. The chasm between minds may be wider than the chasm between stars. And this brings us to a realization that is, in many ways, even more vertigo-inducing than the sheer physical size of the cosmos. We must confront the concept of deep time. You see, when we ask, "Where is everybody?" we are implicitly assuming that everybody should be here now. We assume that the history of the universe is a stable platform upon which civilizations emerge and stay, like cities on a map. But the universe is not a map. It is a process. It is a river that flows relentlessly forward, and we are but a momentary ripple on its surface. Consider the age of the universe, 13.8 billion years. It is a number so large that it slides off the human mind like water off glass. To understand what this means for our search for aliens, we have to look at the stability of civilizations. How long does a technological civilization last? We have been technological in the sense of possessing radio astronomy and spaceflight for barely a single century, 100 years. In the context of 13.8 billion years, that is 1/138 millionth of the age of the cosmos. It is a flash. It is less than a flash. If we assume that we are typical and in science, it is always safer to assume you are average rather than special, then we must face the possibility that technological civilizations are inherently unstable. They may rise, discover the laws of thermodynamics, build machines, split the atom, and then, inevitably, within a few thousand years, they succumb to the weight of their own complexity. They might destroy themselves through war, or ecological collapse, or simply lose the drive to explore. If the average lifespan of a civilization is, say, 10,000 years, then the chances of two civilizations existing in the Milky Way at the exact same moment are infinitesimally small. We are like fireflies blinking in a vast, dark forest. One firefly blinks on for a second in the east. Then, 1,000 years later, another blinks on in the west. They both exist. They both shine. But they never see each other. The forest remains dark. The silence we hear is not the absence of life. It is the absence of synchronicity. We have arrived at the party billion of years too late, or perhaps a billion years too early. The ruins of great empires may be orbiting stars just a few hundred light years away, but they are silent, stone, and dust. The radio waves they sent out swept past Earth when dinosaurs were grazing in the swamps, and there were no antennas to catch them. This temporal mismatch creates a barrier just as absolute as the speed of light. It means that even if the galaxy is fertile, even if life is common, contact is rare. We are isolated by the abyss of time. But let us suppose, for the sake of argument, that we are wrong about the timescales. Let us suppose that somewhere A civilization has managed to survive for millions of years. They have solved the problems of energy and aggression. They are stable. Why haven't they come here? Why haven't they visited us? This forces us to return to the laws of physics, specifically the laws that govern energy and motion. We have to talk about the energy trap. Science fiction has done a wonderful job of deceiving us about the cost of travel. In the movies, a captain gives an order, the engines hum, and the ship streaks into the stars. It looks effortless. But in the real universe, motion is never free. To move a mass, any mass requires energy. To move a mass across interstellar distances within a reasonable time frame requires amounts of energy that border on the ludicrous. Let's look at the numbers. To send a spacecraft to the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, which is roughly 4.2 light-years away, within a human lifetime, say, 40 years, you need to travel at about 10% of the speed of light. That is 30,000 kilometers per second. It is a speed so fast that a grain of sand hitting your ship would have the kinetic energy of a hand grenade. Now, imagine we want to send a ship large enough to carry humans, not a tiny probe, but a habitat. A ship with life support, radiation shielding, food, water, and enough space for a crew to not go insane. Let's be conservative and say this ship has the mass of a modern aircraft carrier. To accelerate that mass to 10% of the speed of light requires an energy input roughly equivalent to the entire energy consumption of the world for several decades, and that is just to speed up. You also have to slow down when you get there, which doubles the energy requirement. And here is where the tyranny of the rocket equation comes into play. To generate that energy, you need fuel, but fuel has mass. If you want to go faster or go further, you need more fuel, but adding more fuel makes the ship heavier. A heavier ship needs even more fuel to accelerate the fuel you just added. It is an exponential curse. By the time you do the math for a manned interstellar voyage using chemical rockets or even nuclear fission, the amount of fuel you need exceeds the mass of the known universe. It is mathematically impossible. But you might say, what about antimatter? What about fusion? Yes, antimatter is the most potent fuel source allowed by physics, but we do not have it. We can create it, atom by atom, in particle accelerators like the Large Hadron Collider, but to make even a gram of it would take millions of years and cost more than the global economy. And even if you had it, storing it is a nightmare. It explodes with the force of a nuclear bomb if it touches any matter at all. To build an engine that can harness that power without vaporizing the ship is an engineering challenge that may well be unsolvable. And even if we solve the energy problem, even if we build the antimatter engines, we run into the structure of space itself. The faster you go, the more the universe pushes back. Interstellar space is not empty. It is filled with gas, dust, and stray atoms. At 10% or 20% of the speed of light, these atoms strike the front of your ship like a continuous beam of high-energy radiation. The friction of the vacuum, if you like, becomes a deadly ionizing laser. You would need shielding meters thick to protect the crew, which adds mass, which brings us back to the energy problem. It is a trap. The universe seems to be designed to keep us in our boxes. So, we cannot go fast. That is the verdict of thermodynamics. But what if we go slow? What if we accept that we cannot cheat the laws of physics, and instead we build generation ships? These would be floating cities, self-contained worlds that drift through the darkness for thousands of years. The people who arrive at the destination would be the great-great-great-grandchildren of the people who left. They would be born in the void, live in the void, and die in the void, tending to the hydroponic gardens and maintaining the nuclear reactors, all for a dream of a planet they will never see. This is a beautiful idea, philosophically. It speaks to human endurance. And this brings us to the third great barrier, one that is often overshadowed by the physics, but is perhaps the most absolute of all, the barrier of biology. We are not just consciousness floating in jars. We are physical beings. We are the product of 4 billion years of evolution on a specific rock, orbiting a specific star, under specific conditions. Our biology is tuned to Earth with a precision that we are only just beginning to understand. We are tuned to Earth's gravity, Earth's magnetic field, Earth's atmosphere, and Earth's microbial life. We take gravity. We think of gravity as a force that holds us down, but it is also a force that builds us up. Our bones, our muscles, our cardiovascular system, they all rely on the constant pull of 1 gram to function. We have seen what happens to astronauts who spend 6 months on the International Space Station. Despite rigorous exercise, they lose bone mass. Their hearts change shape. Their vision degrades because the fluid pressure in their skulls shifts. Their immune systems weaken. And this is in low Earth orbit, inside the protective magnetic field of our planet. Now imagine a human body born in zero gravity, or artificial gravity, deep in interstellar space. How would a fetus develop? Would the bones form correctly? Would the brain wire itself correctly? We don't know, but the evidence suggests that we are not modular components that can be unplugged from Earth and plugged into space. We are deeply, inextricably woven into the planetary environment. And then there is the radiation. This is the silent killer of all space fantasies. Earth is protected by a magnetic field that deflects the solar wind and cosmic rays. Beyond that bubble, the universe is awash in high-energy particles. These are subatomic bullets traveling at near light speed. They tear through metal, they tear through plastic, and they tear through DNA. On a trip to Mars, which takes only months, the radiation dose is significant. On a trip to the stars, which takes centuries, the radiation is catastrophic. It would scour the genetic code of the crew. It would lead to cancers, organ failure, and cognitive decline. But more terrifyingly, it would damage the germline, the sperm, and eggs. The children born on a generation ship would likely suffer from severe mutations. Over a few generations, the population would degrade. We are not evolved to withstand the hard radiation of the cosmos. We are soft, watery creatures, evolved for the gentle, shielded environment of a biosphere. There is also the question of the microbiome. We are not individuals. We are ecosystems. We carry trillions of bacteria in our gut, on our skin, in our lungs. These bacteria are essential for our digestion, our immunity, even our mental health. They, too, are evolved for Earth. In the sterile, recycled environment of a starship, this microbiome would change. The balance would shift. We might find that we simply cannot digest food properly, or that our immune systems turn against us, or that we succumb to opportunistic infections that would be harmless on Earth. And let us not forget the mind. The human mind evolved in a world of horizons, of day and night, of seasons, of weather. We evolved in a world of complexity, forests, oceans, crowds. What happens to the human psyche when it is confined to a metal can for generations? What happens when nature is just a hydroponic garden? What happens when you can never leave, never escape, never see a stranger? The psychological strain of such an existence is unimaginable. We are social animals, yes, but we are also animals of the open world. A generation ship is a prison, a high-tech, self-sustaining prison, but a prison nonetheless. History shows us that small, isolated groups of humans under stress do not tend to create utopias. They tend to fracture. Social order breaks down. Factions form. If a civil war breaks out on a ship halfway to Alpha Centauri, there is no escape. There is no un-peacekeeper force. There is just the hull, and outside, the lethal vacuum. One hull breach, one sabotaged airlock, and the entire endeavor ends in silence. When you stack these barriers up, the immense distances, The crushing energy requirements, the temporal disconnect, the radiation, the physiological decay, the psychological trauma, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. The universe is not designed for us to leave our home. It is not a playground. It is a quarantine zone. This sounds bleak. It sounds like a door slamming in our faces. We want to believe in Star Trek. We want to believe that we can boldly go. But physics and biology are not interested in our desires. They are the rules of the game, and the rules are strict. However, I want to suggest that this impossibility is actually a protective mechanism. Imagine if interstellar travel were easy. Imagine if any civilization that discovered radio could also build warp drives. The galaxy would be a chaotic war zone. Colonizers would swarm from star to star, consuming resources, displacing indigenous life, spreading conflict. The sheer difficulty of space travel ensures that civilizations remain separated. It ensures that if a species wants to survive, it must learn to live within its means. It must learn sustainability. It must learn to master its own planet before it can even dream of ruining another one. The great silence, then, might be a sign of maturity. Perhaps the reason we don't see galactic empires is not because everyone is dead, but because everyone who survives grows up. They realize that expansion is a primitive urge. They realize that the quest for more land, more energy, more stars, is a trap. They turn inward. They refine their philosophy, their art, their understanding of the quantum world. They stop shouting into the void and start listening to the quiet of their own existence. But there is one final, lingering hope that people cling to. Okay, they say, maybe we can't go there physically. Maybe we can't send our bodies. But what about our minds? What about artificial intelligence? What about sending a signal? This brings us to the realm of communication. Surely, if the galaxy is old, someone must be broadcasting. Someone must be sending out the Encyclopedia Galactica for us to read. Here, too, we run into a barrier. But this time, it is not a barrier of energy or time. It is a barrier of meaning. It is the barrier of understanding. We assume that because we use mathematics and we use radio, that aliens will do the same. We assume a universality of thought. But is that assumption justified? Or is it the ultimate act of anthropomorphism? When we look at life on Earth, we see a dazzling variety of cognitive styles. A dolphin has a brain larger than ours, but it thinks in sound and sonar images. It lives in a world of liquid acoustics. An octopus has a brain distributed throughout its arms. Its very limbs think. A colony of ants possesses a collective intelligence that can build climate-controlled cities and wage war. Yet no single ant is smart. Now, extrapolate that difference across the stars. An alien intelligence evolving on a world with different gravity, different atmosphere, perhaps in a fluid medium, or perhaps in the vacuum itself. Why would their minds resemble ours in the slightest? We might be looking for a handshake, while they are offering a symphony of smells. We might be listening for prime numbers, while they are communicating through the polarization of starlight. This leads us to the communication gap, a chasm perhaps wider than the physical space between stars. Even if we received a signal tomorrow, a strong, clear, artificial signal from the direction of Vega, would we understand it? Or would it be like a dog listening to a lecture on quantum mechanics? We might hear the sound, we might recognize it as structured, but the meaning would be forever beyond our grasp. We have to consider the possibility that we are culturally and cognitively isolated as well. We are trapped in the human box. Our logic, our mathematics, our art, our values, they are all derived from our specific evolutionary history. We project them onto the universe, but the universe is under no obligation to reflect them back. So, where does this leave us? We have looked at the space that separates us, the time that divides us, the energy that constrains us, and the biology that anchors us. We have dismantled the rocket ships and the warp drives. We have turned off the lights on the galactic empire. It seems we are back in the dark forest, alone. But in this second part of our journey, I hope you are beginning to feel a shift in perspective. If we cannot leave, and if no one can come to us, then the value of what we have right here, right now, changes. It skyrockets. If Earth is the only place in the universe where human beings can live, literally the only place, then Earth is not just a planet. It is a holy grail. It is the most valuable object in the cosmos. We treat this world as a resource mine, as a dumping ground, as a waiting room for a better future among the stars. But if the stars are out of reach, then the waiting room is all there is. This is the main event. This is the only stage we will ever stand upon. The impossibility of meeting aliens is not a depressing conclusion. It is a call to focus. It strips away the fantasy of escape and forces us to confront reality. And reality, as it turns out, is magnificent enough. We don't need Pandora. We don't need Tatooine. We have a world with liquid water, with breathable air, with a magnetic shield, with a stable star. We have a world that produced Shakespeare and Einstein and the Beatles. Is that not enough? As we move forward, we must delve deeper into this idea of alien minds and the profound difficulty of communication. We need to understand just how truly strange the universe might be, and why our search for a mirror image of ourselves is doomed to fail, because only by understanding how alien the aliens would be can we truly understand how human we are. And that understanding is the key to our survival. We are not going to the stars. The stars are not coming to us. We are here, and here is a place worth fighting for. But the story doesn't end with physics and biology. There is a philosophical dimension to this silence that we have yet to explore. The silence is not just a barrier, it is a mirror. And what we see in that mirror might surprise you. So, we stand on the precipice of a profound realization. We have looked at the physical abyss that separates the stars, and we have looked at the temporal abyss that separates civilizations. We have acknowledged that our bodies are too frail for the journey and that our engines are too weak. But there is a third abyss, one that is less tangible but perhaps even more unbridgeable than the others. It is the abyss of the mind. Let us imagine, for a moment, that we are wrong about the physics. Let us imagine that somewhere, against all odds, a civilization has found a way to cheat the energy limits, to warp space, or to build ships that can traverse the galaxy in a heartbeat. Let us imagine they arrive here, in our solar system, tomorrow. The great silver ships hang over our cities. The world holds its breath. We prepare our greetings, our mathematics, our Mozart, our periodic tables. We prepare to say, we are humans. We are intelligent. And then, nothing happens. They do not speak. They do not acknowledge us. They do not land. They simply hang there, inscrutable, silent, operating on a logic that is so completely alien to us that we cannot even begin to comprehend their intentions. This brings us to the most unsettling possibility of all, that even if aliens exist, even if they are here, we might never meet them because we are utterly incompatible. We suffer from a cognitive bias known as anthropomorphism. We project our own nature onto the cosmos. We assume that an advanced species will be curious, that it will be social, that it will be interested in communicating, that it will use language and mathematics in ways we recognize. We assume that they will be like us, only older and wiser like spacefaring versions of ourselves. But evolution does not work that way. Evolution is a chaotic, blind process that adapts life to its specific environment. On Earth, intelligence arose in primates as a tool for social manipulation and tool use in a savanna environment. But that is just one path. Look at the octopus. It is a highly intelligent creature, capable of solving complex puzzles, of escaping containment, of changing its color and texture to communicate. But its brain is not in its head. It is distributed throughout its body. Its arms think. It splits its consciousness in ways we cannot imagine. It is an alien intelligence right here on Earth. And our last common ancestor, with the octopus, lived 600 million years ago. Now, imagine an intelligence that evolved on a world with no atmosphere, or in the crushing depths of a liquid methane ocean, or inside the plasma storms of a star. Or imagine an intelligence that is not biological at all. This is the most likely scenario. If we ever encounter aliens, they will almost certainly be machines. Think about our own trajectory. We have been a biological, technological civilization for a century. We are already on the verge of creating artificial general intelligence. Once we create a machine mind that can improve itself, biology becomes obsolete. A machine does not need air. It does not need water. It does not die of old age. It can process information 1,000,000 times faster than a human neuron. If a civilization survives its technological adolescence, it will inevitably transition from biology to post-biology. It will become a synthetic intelligence. And the motivations of a synthetic superintelligence are likely to be as incomprehensible to us as our motivations are to an ant. Does an ant look up at the humans building a highway and wonder, why are they doing that? Do they want to trade with us? Do they want to share their philosophy? No, the ant is incapable of understanding the concept of a highway, and we, in turn, do not hate the ants. We do not want to destroy them. We simply do not care. They are beneath our notice. This is the indifference of the gods. We look for aliens hoping for a handshake, for a mentor, or even for a conqueror. At least a conqueror acknowledges your existence. But what we are likely to find is absolute indifference. A type II or type III civilization, harnessing the power of entire stars, rearranging solar systems for their computational needs, would look at humanity not as a peer, but as moss growing on a rock. You don't talk to moss. You don't negotiate with moss. You might preserve it if you're feeling sentimental, or you might scrape it off if you need the rock, but you don't meet it. This lack of recognition cuts both ways. Would we even recognize them as life? We scan the radio spectrum for patterns beep, beep, beep. But a truly advanced civilization would likely use communication methods that look like random noise to us. They might encode information in the spin of neutrinos, or in gravity waves, or in the quantum entanglement of particles. Their chatter might be thundering through our bodies right now, and we are deaf to it. We are like a tribe in the Amazon jungle, listening for drumbeats, while the air around them is filled with 5 grams Wi-Fi signals, GPS data, and satellite TV. They hear silence, but the air is full of voices. We are that tribe. There is a dark thought in cosmology known as the dark forest theory, popularized by science fiction but rooted in game theory. It suggests that the universe is a dangerous place, a forest full of hunters. In such a forest, the only way to survive is to stay quiet. If you shout, if you broadcast your position, you get wiped out by a predator you never saw coming. Perhaps the silence of the universe is a survivor's silence. Perhaps every civilization that was loud, that sent out messages, that shouted, "We are here," was destroyed long ago, and the ones that remain are the quiet ones, the paranoid ones, the ones that hide their stars in Dyson spheres and shield their radio emissions. In this scenario, our METI messaging, extraterrestrial intelligence, projects, where we blast maps to Earth into space, are not acts of hope. They are acts of suicidal stupidity. We are the toddler, wandering into the jungle, screaming for attention, unaware of the eyes glowing in the dark. But I suspect the reality is less malevolent and more philosophical. It brings us back to the idea of the inward turn. As a civilization matures, it masters the physical world. It conquers disease, scarcity, and energy needs. What is left to do? Expansion? Why expand into a dead, cold universe when you can create infinite universes inside a computer? If you can upload a mind to a simulation, you can live 1,000 lifetimes in the blink of an eye. You can experience worlds with different laws of physics. You can exist in a state of pure bliss or pure creativity. A civilization that reaches this point, the point of digital transcendence, would have no interest in space travel. Space travel is slow, dangerous, and boring. Why spend 100,000 years flying to a star that turns out to be just another ball of gas when you can simulate a better star in a millisecond? So, the universe might be full of these matryoshka brains, vast computers built around stars, harvesting their energy to power simulations. From the outside, they look like dark, infrared-emitting objects, silent, sleeping. Inside, trillions of minds are living lives of unimaginable richness. But to us, the external observers, they are dead. We will never meet them because they have left the physical universe behind. They have checked out of reality. They are not coming to answer our radio calls because they are playing a different game entirely. This paints a picture of humanity that is both isolating and defining. We are, perhaps, the only ones still playing in the dirt. We are the only ones still fascinated by the physical rocks and the physical stars. We are the primitives of the galaxy, the untranscended, the biologicals, and in that sense, we are invisible to the elders. And there is one final barrier to communication, one that is rooted in the very nature of language and meaning. Philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein famously said, "If a lion could speak, we could not understand him." His point was that language is not just a code, it is a way of life. It is embedded in a shared context. We understand each other because we share the human experience: birth, death, hunger, love, gravity, sunlight. An alien intelligence does not share this context. If they are immortal machines, they do not understand death or fear. If they are a hive mind, they do not understand I or individual. If they perceive time non-linearly, they do not understand cause and effect. Even if we exchange dictionaries, we would not exchange meaning. We would be trading symbols that have no reference in the other's reality. So, the dream of the first contact moment, the handshake, the exchange of wisdom, is a fallacy. It is a story we tell ourselves to feel less alone. The reality of meeting an alien would likely be a moment of profound confusion, followed by silence, a staring contest across an ontological abyss. Even if the galaxy is teeming with life, the distances, the timescales, the biological fragility, and the cognitive gaps mean that for all intents and purposes, we are the only people in the room. And I know how heavy that feels. I know the weight of that solitude. It feels like we have been abandoned in a cathedral that is too big for us. We want the angels to speak. We want the gods to descend. We want to know that someone else is watching. Someone else knows the answers. But they are not coming. The silence is real. The isolation is real. And this brings us to the final turning point of our journey. Because if we accept this, if we truly, deeply accept that we will never meet aliens, it does not lead to despair. It leads to something else. It leads to a radical reevaluation of ourselves. If we are not one of many, then we are the one. If we are not a mediocre sample of galactic life, then we are the miracle. Think about the chain of events that led to you sitting here, reading this. The precise tuning of the physical constants at the Big Bang, the formation of the first stars, which had to die and explode to create the carbon in your cells and the iron in your blood, the formation of the sun, a star stable enough to burn for billions of years, the position of Earth in the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, the collision that created the moon, stabilizing our axis and giving us seasons, the origin of life, a mystery we still cannot solve, the survival of that life through 5 mass extinctions, the rise of consciousness, the invention of language. It is a chain of improbabilities, so long, so fragile, that it defies belief. If you were to run the universe again, you might get stars. You might get planets. You might even get bacteria. But would you get this? Would you get a species that can write poetry, compose symphonies, and look up at the stars and ask why? I submit to you that the answer is no. We are a fluke. We are a cosmic accident of the highest order. And if the universe is as hostile and difficult as we have seen, then we may well be the only accident of this kind currently existing in the Milky Way. This changes everything. It changes our economics. It changes how we treat each other. Because if we are the only flame of consciousness in the dark, then we have a responsibility that is terrifying in its magnitude. We are not just living our little lives, we are carrying the fire of the universe. If we destroy ourselves through nuclear war, through climate collapse, through AI, misalignment, we are not just ending our own story. We might be eliminating the only pair of eyes that can see the galaxy. We might be blinding the universe. Gravity pulling, stars burning, black holes eating, but no one to know, no one to care. We are the universe's way of knowing itself, and if we are alone, then we are the only way the universe knows itself. This realization strips away the childish wish for alien saviors. It forces us to grow up. It tells us that we cannot look to the sky for help. We must look to the mirror. We must look to the ground beneath our feet. And this brings us to the final part of our story. We have traversed the galaxy. We have fought the laws of physics. We have peered into the alien mind, and we have found only silence. But in that silence, we hear a new sound. It is the sound of the earth. It is the sound of our own breathing. It is the realization that the treasure we were looking for out there, in the void, has been right here all along. We need to talk about Earth, not as a launch pad, not as a waiting room, but as the destination, the final destination. So, we arrive at the end of our journey. We have stood at the edge of the galaxy and looked into the abyss, and the abyss has stared back at us with complete, indifferent silence. We have measured the distances and found them impassable. We have calculated the energy and found it unreachable. We have examined the time scales and found them incompatible. We have even looked into the mirror of consciousness and realized that an alien mind might be so fundamentally different from our own that connection is impossible. We are left with a conclusion that is stripping, raw, and undeniable. We are alone. For a long time, humanity has treated this possibility as a nightmare. We call it cosmic loneliness. We feel a sense of abandonment, like children left in a vast, empty house. We have spent decades, billions of dollars, and our best intellectual energy trying to disprove it, trying to find just one bacteria on Mars, one beep from a radio telescope, one artifact on the moon. We are desperate for company. We are desperate for validation. We want to know that we are not the only ones who matter. But I want to ask you to do something difficult. I want you to take that fear, that sense of disappointment, and turn it over. Look at the other side of the coin. Because if you look at it correctly, the fact that we are alone is not a tragedy. It is the most profound, the most beautiful, and the most important truth we will ever know. If we cannot meet aliens, if the universe has effectively quarantined us here on Earth, then it forces us to confront the value of Earth itself. Imagine if the universe were different. Imagine if Earth were just one of a billion inhabited worlds. Imagine if there were a galactic federation and we could hop on a shuttle and fly to a planet of blue humanoids or a planet of intelligent insects. If that were true, then Earth would be common. It would be real estate. If we destroyed this planet, if we burned the forests and poisoned the oceans, it would be a shame, but it wouldn't be a catastrophe. We could just move. We could go to the next planet over. Humanity, or at least some of us, would survive. But that is not the universe we live in. We live in a universe where life is excruciatingly rare. In all the billions of miles we have surveyed, in all the spectra of light we have analyzed, We have found only one place where matter has organized itself into singing, dancing, thinking complexity. Here, just here. This means that Earth is not real estate. It is not a resource. It is a miracle. The impossibility of meeting aliens transforms our planet from a rock into a holy grail. It means that the biosphere of Earth, this thin, fragile layer of gas and water and life clinging to a spinning ball of iron, is the most complex, valuable structure in the known universe. A single leaf from a tree in your garden is more complex, more sophisticated, and more precious than entire galaxies of dead stars. A single human conversation contains more meaning than 1 billion years of supernova explosions. When we realize that no one is coming to save us, and no one is waiting for us to join them, the responsibility that falls upon our shoulders is immense. We are the custodians of the flame. We are the only eyes the universe has. We are the only ears. If we extinguish ourselves, if we allow our civilization to collapse through greed or stupidity or war, we are not just ending our own story. We are blinding the cosmos. We are returning the universe to a state of dumb, blind mechanism. This changes the nature of our problems here on Earth. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, biodiversity loss. These are no longer just political or economic issues. They are cosmic issues. They are existential threats to the only known instance of consciousness. When we burn a rainforest, we are not just destroying trees. We are destroying a library of genetic information that took 4 billion years to write, and which exists nowhere else. When we fight wars over borders, we are fighting over lines on a map on the only lifeboat in a dark ocean. It is the height of madness. The great silence of the universe is a mirror. It reflects us back to ourselves and says, "This is it. This is all you have. Make it count." And this brings us to the concept of meaning. We often look to the stars for meaning. We think that if we meet aliens, they will tell us the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. We think they will give us a purpose. But the silence tells us that meaning is not something we find out there. It is something we create here. The universe, in its natural state, is meaningless. It is just physics. Atoms crashing into atoms. Gravity pulling matter together. Stars burning hydrogen into helium. There is no purpose in a supernova. There is no justice in a black hole. Justice, purpose, beauty, love, art, science. These are things that we bring to the table. We are the meaning makers. If we are alone, then we are the only source of meaning in the universe. We are the only beings capable of looking at a sunset and feeling awe. We are the only beings capable of understanding the laws of physics that govern the stars. We are the universe, waking up and knowing itself. This perspective shifts our gaze from the horizon back to the ground beneath our feet. It tells us that the future of humanity is not in the stars, at least not for a very, very long time. The future of humanity is on Earth. We have spent so much time dreaming of Mars, of Titan, of Alpha Centauri. We treat Earth as a stepping stone, a cradle that we must outgrow. But Earth is not a cradle. It is our home. It is the only environment in the entire cosmos that is perfectly suited to us, because we were made by it. We are not passengers on Earth. We are part of Earth. We are the part of Earth that has learned to talk. The impossibility of leaving the energy trap, the biological barriers, is a sign. It is a sign that we need to mature. We need to stop acting like teenagers who can't wait to leave their parents' house and start acting like adults who take care of their own estate. We need to master planetary stewardship before we can even think about galactic citizenship. And let's be honest about what galactic citizenship would even mean. If the universe is as vast and hostile as we know it is, then the idea of a Star Wars or Star Trek future is just a projection of our colonial past. It is humans wanting to conquer new lands. But space is not land, it is death. The true challenge of our species is not to conquer the galaxy. It is to conquer ourselves. It is to prove that intelligence is a sustainable evolutionary strategy. Right now, the jury is still out. We have had radio technology for 100 years, and we have almost destroyed ourselves 3 or 4 times. We are a danger to ourselves. Maybe the reason we don't see aliens is that intelligence is self-limiting. Maybe every civilization reaches a point where it discovers nuclear power, or genetic engineering, or artificial intelligence, and it lacks the wisdom to control it. Maybe they all burn out. We are at that point right now. And looking out at the silence of the stars should terrify us into sanity. It should make us realize how close we are to becoming just another layer of dust in the geological record. But it should also give us hope, because we are still here. We are still talking. We are still asking questions. We have recognized the trap, and by recognizing it, we can avoid it. We can choose to build a civilization that is in balance with its biosphere. We can choose to value cooperation over conflict. We can choose to prioritize the long-term survival of our species over short-term gain. We can choose to become the wise elders that we were hoping to meet in the stars. Since no one is coming to teach us, we must teach ourselves. Since no one is coming to save us, we must save ourselves. The impossibility of meeting aliens forces us to accept our limitations, but it also reveals our potential. We are small, yes. We are fragile, yes. We are trapped in a tiny pocket of space and time, but within that pocket, we can do extraordinary things. We can compose the Ninth Symphony. We can paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. We can discover the theory of general relativity. We can cure diseases. We can love one another. We can create a world where every human being has the opportunity to flourish. Is that not enough? Why do we need the galaxy? Why do we need 1 billion stars? Is this one, blue, beautiful world, not enough for us? I believe it is. I believe Earth is enough. I believe that if we spent a fraction of the energy we spend dreaming of alien worlds on fixing our own, we could create a paradise right here. We could create a world that is stable, just, and vibrant. A world that could last for millions of years. And perhaps, in the deep, deep future, if we survive, if we grow up, if we become wise, perhaps then we will be ready to leave. Perhaps then we will send out our robot emissaries, not as conquerors, but as gardeners, not to find life, but to plant it, to spread the miracle of consciousness to the dead stars. But that is a dream for 1 billion years from now. For us, here, today, the task is simpler and harder. The task is to survive. The task is to appreciate. The task is to protect. So, the next time you look up at the night sky, do not feel sad that it is silent. Do not feel lonely. Feel the cold air on your face. Feel the gravity pulling you down to the earth. Feel the blood pumping in your veins. Look at the stars, and let their silence speak to you. Let them tell you that you are rare, that you are improbable, that you are the result of a lucky streak that has lasted for 13.8 billion years. Let the silence tell you that you are alone, and therefore, you are everything. We are the only ones. And because we are the only ones, we matter. We matter more than we can possibly imagine. The universe has given us a gift. It has given us a stage. It has given us a spotlight in the dark. It is up to us to decide what the play will be about. It is up to us to decide if the play ends in a tragedy or a triumph. We will never meet aliens. We will never join a galactic federation. We will never escape the constraints of physics. But we have Earth. We have each other. And if we are wise, that will be enough. More than enough. It will be everything.